There's a reason you feel stuck, why success seems just out of reach, no matter how hard you try. But what if I told you the problem isn't you, it's your system? The secret to unstoppable success, wealth, and freedom isn't found in motivation or talent. It's hidden in the tiny, invisible habits controlling your life right now. The story you're about to hear will expose the small, powerful shifts that separate the ordinary from the extraordinary. Once you master them, success won't be a possibility. It will be inevitable. Are you ready to change everything? It was 6:13 a.m., and the alarm on Ethan Carter's phone buzzed relentlessly, vibrating against the wooden nightstand like an insistent reminder of everything he had failed to do yesterday. He groaned, rubbing his temples, willing himself to get up. But as usual, his thumb found the snooze button before his thoughts could catch up. 5 more minutes, he muttered. 5 minutes turned into 20. By the time he dragged himself out of bed, the sun was already peeking through the blinds, mocking his wasted time. Ethan wasn't lazy, at least he didn't think so, but he was stuck. Life had become a series of unfulfilled promises, to himself mostly. He'd start projects, but never finish them. He'd make plans to improve his health, career, and relationships, yet somehow he always found himself exactly where he had been months before. It wasn't that he didn't try, he just couldn't seem to stick with anything long enough for it to matter. Today was no different. He stared at his reflection in the mirror, the tired eyes, the slight slouch in his posture. The version of himself he saw wasn't the person he wanted to be. Something had to change, but how? Later that evening, Ethan found himself at a local cafe, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee and pretending to work on his laptop. He wasn't fooling anyone. Instead of writing the business proposal he had promised his boss, he was mindlessly scrolling through social media, watching motivational videos he knew would inspire him for 5 minutes before he went back to his usual habits. That's when he heard it, the title of a book being discussed at the next table. Atomic Habits. You've got to read it, man. It literally changed the way I do everything, one guy said, stirring his espresso with far too much enthusiasm. Ethan stole a glance at the book in his hands. The cover was simple, unassuming. I don't know, man. Another self-help book? His friend replied. No, this one's different. It's about making tiny changes that actually stick. Like, instead of trying to overhaul your life overnight, you focus on getting just 1% better every day. Small wins, dude. It compounds. Ethan wasn't usually one for these things. He had read plenty of self-improvement books before, each one promising transformation, yet here he was, still the same. But something about the way the guy spoke caught his attention. Small changes, 1% better. That didn't sound overwhelming. Maybe, just maybe, it was worth a try. He pulled out his phone and ordered the book. Ethan's copy of Atomic Habits arrived 2 days later. It sat on his coffee table for another 3 before he finally picked it up. Just read the first chapter, he told himself, and that's how it began. As he read, he found himself nodding. The book wasn't about massive overnight transformations. It was about tiny, almost invisible changes. James Clear called them atomic habits, small behaviors that, when repeated consistently, led to extraordinary results over time. One idea stuck with him. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. That hit hard. Ethan had always been a big dreamer. He had set countless goals: get fit, be more productive, save money, but he had never focused on the systems that would make them happen. His goals were clear, but his habits were non-existent. So, he decided to start small. 1. Fixing his mornings. Instead of setting a goal to wake up early, he made one simple rule: move his alarm across the room. That way, when it rang, he had no choice but to get up and turn it off. The first morning, he groggily walked to the alarm and nearly crawled back into bed, but he caught himself. One small change: stay up. The second morning was slightly easier. By the end of the week, waking up on time felt almost normal. 2. Overcoming procrastination. The next struggle was his work habits. Ethan had a terrible tendency to delay tasks until they became urgent. The book's 2-minute rule caught his eye. If a habit takes less than 2 minutes to start, do it immediately. He applied this to his work. Instead of saying, "I have to write a full report," he told himself, "just open the document and write one sentence." More often than not, that single sentence turned into a paragraph, then a page. By the end of the week, he had submitted his proposal ahead of schedule, a first for him. 3. Building financial discipline. Ethan had always struggled with saving money. He'd try extreme budgeting plans only to give up within a month. This time, he took a different approach. He automated a small transfer of $10 to his savings account every Friday. It was so small that he barely noticed it. A month later, he checked his balance and saw an extra $40. "Okay, this actually works," he thought. He increased the amount to $20 per week, then $30. For the first time in his life, saving money didn't feel like a struggle. Hey, sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying this story so far, consider hitting that subscribe button. Your support truly means the world to us. All right, let's continue. Ethan was feeling good. His mornings were structured, his procrastination was under control, and his savings were growing. For the first time in years, he felt like he was making real progress. But then came the first big setback. It started with one bad morning. He had stayed up late, binge-watching a show, thinking, "I deserve a break." The next morning, he hit snooze. Then again. By the time he got up, he was rushing to work, skipping breakfast, and feeling like his old self again. "It's just one bad day," he told himself. But the next morning was the same, and the next. By the end of the week, it felt like all his progress had unraveled. He almost gave up. Then he remembered something from Atomic Habits: never miss twice. Clear wrote that missing once is human, but missing twice in a row? That's how bad habits resurface. So, Ethan forced himself to wake up early the next morning, even though he felt like crap. He got up, made coffee, and sat down with the book again. "I'm not starting over. I'm just continuing where I left off." That small mental shift made all the difference. The next few weeks were a roller coaster. Some days, he nailed his habits. Other days, he slipped. But he no longer saw failure as a reason to quit. Instead, he adjusted. He kept a habit tracker, marking each day he followed through. He set tiny rewards for himself, like a nice dinner if he saved a certain amount. He found an accountability partner, his best friend Jake, who also wanted to build better habits. Slowly, the changes weren't just something he did, they were becoming part of who he was. He wasn't trying to be a disciplined person anymore. He was a disciplined person. Just when Ethan thought he had things under control, life threw him another curveball. His company announced layoffs. The email hit his inbox late on a Friday afternoon. "We regret to inform you that due to restructuring, your position has been eliminated." He stared at the screen, his heart pounding. This wasn't just a job, it was his stability, his income, and his identity. Old thoughts crept in. Maybe I'm just not meant to succeed. Maybe all these good habits were pointless. For the first time in months, he felt like giving up. That night, he sat in the dark, scrolling through job listings, overwhelmed. He almost reached for a drink to numb the frustration. But then he noticed something, his copy of Atomic Habits, still on the coffee table. He flipped to a random page. You should be far more concerned with your current trajectory than with your current results. That hit him hard. Yes, he had lost his job, but that didn't erase his progress. His habits, his systems, were still in place. So, instead of spiraling, he took action. He set a new routine. Wake up, apply to 3 jobs before noon, then hit the gym. He reworked his budget, grateful for the savings he had built. He treated job hunting like a habit, small steps every day, no matter what. Days turned into weeks. Rejections came, but so did interviews. And then a breakthrough, an offer at a company he had admired for years. A better position, better pay. It wasn't luck. It was the system he had built. By the time he signed the contract, Ethan realized something profound. He wasn't just someone who had read Atomic Habits. He was living it. With his new job secured, Ethan felt a sense of pride he hadn't experienced before, not because of the job itself, but because of who he had become. He no longer felt like the guy who started things and never finished. He was the guy who showed up every day, even when it was hard. The habits that once felt like a struggle were now second nature. Waking up early? Normal. Exercising? Routine. Managing his money? No stress. Tackling work without procrastination? Automatic. One night, while catching up with Jake over dinner, his friend smirked. "Dude, you're like a different person. Remember when you'd say you'd hit the gym but bail every time?" Ethan laughed. "Yeah, but that was before." "Before what?" Jake asked. Ethan thought for a moment. "Before I understood how habits actually work. Before I stopped relying on motivation and started focusing on systems. Before I became the kind of person who follows through." That realization hit deep. James Clear was right. Habits weren't just actions. They were votes for the kind of person you wanted to be. And Ethan? He had finally become the man he always believed he could be. Months passed, and Ethan's transformation continued, but he knew this wasn't the end of the journey, just the beginning of a new chapter. One afternoon, he sat at the same cafe where he had first overheard the conversation about Atomic Habits. This time, he wasn't mindlessly scrolling or avoiding work. He was journaling, reflecting on how far he had come. He flipped back through his notes from the book, stopping at a passage he had underlined. "Every action is a vote for the type of person you wish to become." It was true. Every small change, every choice, every habit, it had all compounded into something bigger than he ever imagined. As he sipped his coffee, he overheard a conversation at the next table. "I just can't seem to stick to anything. I start strong, then life gets in the way," a guy sighed. His friend shook his head. "I know, man. I need motivation." Ethan smiled. He had once believed that too. But now he knew the truth. Motivation fades. Goals can feel distant. But systems make change inevitable. And as he picked up his pen to write his next goal, he knew one thing for certain. Whatever he set his mind to next, he'd follow through. Because now that's just who he was. If you've made it this far, there's something inside you that's craving change. Maybe you're tired of setting goals and never following through. Maybe you've tried and failed so many times that you wonder if real change is even possible for you. I want you to know something. You are not broken. The problem has never been you. The problem has been the way you've been approaching change. For years, we've been taught that success requires massive action. That if you want to be productive, you need to wake up at 5 a.m. That if you want to be fit, you need to spend hours in the gym. That if you want to be successful, you need to work nonstop. And so, we chase perfection. We make big plans. We tell ourselves, this time will be different. But then, life happens. Motivation fades. The excitement wears off. And suddenly, we're back where we started. Not because we weren't capable, but because we were trying to change in a way that was unsustainable. James Clear said it best in Atomic Habits. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Think about that for a moment. We all have dreams. We all want to be healthier, wealthier, happier, more fulfilled, but those dreams mean nothing if we don't have the habits to support them. Ethan's story wasn't about a dramatic overnight transformation. He didn't wake up one day and suddenly become disciplined, productive, and successful. He started small, moving his alarm across the room, writing just one sentence, saving just $10 a week. Individually, these things seemed insignificant, but together, they changed his life. Here's the biggest mistake most people make when trying to change. They focus on what they want to achieve instead of who they want to become. They say, I want to run a marathon. Instead, they should say, I am a runner. They say, I want to be productive. Instead, they should say, I am the kind of person who gets things done. This shift is powerful, because when you see yourself as the kind of person who does something, you don't rely on motivation. You just do it. Ethan didn't just want to wake up early. He became the kind of person who values his mornings. He didn't just want to be productive. He became the kind of person who follows through. He didn't just want to save money. He became the kind of person who is financially responsible. And once something becomes part of who you are, you don't have to force yourself to do it. You just do it. If you take one thing away from this story, let it be this: small habits matter. Forget about the big, overwhelming changes. Focus on getting just 1% better every day. Want to get in shape? Start with one push-up. Want to read more? Read one page. Want to be more productive? Work for just 2 minutes. It doesn't matter how small it seems. What matters is consistency. Because small habits, when repeated consistently, become unstoppable progress. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to start. And when you do, remember this: every action is a vote for the kind of person you want to become. So, today, cast your first vote. And then keep going. Your future self is waiting.